All right, last video for the week. This one is video 16, and we're talking about external validity. Very short, very quick. External validity is just how well does your study apply to people in general? How generalizable is your study? You can think of it at how much can you use your results for other people than the people who were exactly like the people in your sample. So like, is your study relevant to the real world? For example, if your study participants are all college students, then your results might not apply to 50-year-old men who live in Alaska, right? It just sort of makes sense. It's a kind of an easy concept to figure out. They might apply a little bit. I mean, we're all humans, but it might be that there are some aspects that don't apply, or maybe most of the stuff doesn't apply. Your study results might not be relevant at all to a group of third graders who live in Wisconsin, right? Easy stuff to understand. It might be that it's because of what you studied more than it is because of the group that you used to study it on, right? So sometimes the group you used is what is the limiting factor. Sometimes it's the thing you studied. So for example, you study something that's pretty unusual, then your study won't apply to a lot of people because the thing you studied is pretty unusual. And that's okay, because maybe that is your purpose, is you want to study this unusual thing. And it's not going to apply to every person in the world. There's no reason it needs to. And so, for example, let's say there's a rare type of cancer that you're studying. And because it's a rare type of cancer, your study is not going to apply to most of the people. And it won't even apply to most of the people who have cancer, but it will apply to the people who have this rare type of cancer. And so your study is going to be extremely valuable to them because there are not many people with that type of cancer. And so there's probably not a lot of studies on that rare type of cancer. So it's relevant to the people with that rare type of cancer, but most of the people it's not relevant for. That's fine. What you want to do then is just make sure you mention it, right, in your article so people don't get confused. One thing to look at is internal versus external validity, the relationship between the two. Often, the more of one you have, the less of the other. Often, not always. And so if you have more tight control of internal validity, let's say that you've got a lot of great control in your participant sample, and you're managing a lot of variables and you're using a lot of control, that might also mean that the results of your study then they're not going to be able to apply to much of a larger group because you had so much tight control. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't have tight control. Sometimes it's really useful to have some good control, and then maybe a future study can look at the same thing with a wider sample and see if they get the same results, so that they can say, well, maybe external validity is high. We did another study and we looked at a less tightly controlled group and we had the same results, which means it seems like there is good external validity. So to sum up, external validity is something to you want to look at what are threats to external validity. External validity is not in and of itself a threat. It's just thinking about how applicable are your results? How generalizable are your results? And you want to discuss this in your discussion section. You want to say, these results apply to, and then kind of talk about who they apply to based on your participant sample. So discuss it. Okay, that's it for this week. See you next week.